All the Spanish regions have a representation in Brussels. Not all in this moment, because Aragon, after the elections, etc., the regional government decided to close the office, and now they are starting to think about opening it again. But Cantabria is represented. What is the role of the office? The web page I am showing you is the web page of the Directorate General of European Affairs, of Economy and European Affairs. And this part of the web page is the page regarding the office. It is all in Spanish, but I think most of you understand very well the Spanish. So you have the different aims or the different role of the Cantabrian office, and you have that the first role of any regional representation in Brussels is the institutional representation of the region. Why? Because all the regions, or almost all the Spanish regions, are represented, for instance, in the Committee of the Regions. Of course, to understand the role of a regional office, you must know what is the institutional structure of the European Union. You know that in Brussels there are many institutions that take very important decisions for everyone's life. These institutions are the European Commission, the European Parliament, the European Council of Ministers of the European Union, and you have some advisory committees like the European Committee of the Regions or like the European Social and Economic Committee. All these institutions are in Brussels. And a regional representation like this one interacts every day with every institution. In what moment? It depends on the legislative moments in which we are. First mission of regional representation, the institutional representation. Second mission, to follow the European legislation and to try to influence on this, because the way the European directives, regulation, etc. are prepared is a very long way with different institutions. The European Commission is in charge of preparing the proposal, but afterwards you have the role of the member states represented in the European Council of Ministers and the European Parliament, where all our representatives, our MEPs, are sitting, and that change the original proposal of the European Commission in order to reflect on it all the different interests. What is the role of a regional office? First of all, we interact with the European Commission in the preparatory moment when the officials working at the European Commission are writing this. And by having the access of these preparatory documents, we can know if they can have any negative or difficult consequence for our regions. So we start to act with these officials in order to give them some important messages. Of course, Cantabria cannot act alone. This is impossible. Spain, Germany cannot act alone at the European level. So for this, in Brussels, it is very important to practice what we call the networking. The networking is the most important word in the, in the European business, if you want. So every region, every sector has to be integrated in networks, in different networks. For instance, in Cantabria. Cantabria is part of the Conference of Peripheral and Maritime Regions, because for us, as a maritime region, it is very important to have this network defending topics as important as accessibility for peripheral regions, as marine energy, for instance. There are several topics that we share with other maritime regions in Europe. We take part in another network which is called ERIN, and it means more or less European Regions for Research and Innovation, to promote the participation of our universities, technological centers, companies in innovation and research European programs. When, for instance, the University of Cantabria or a technological center in Cantabria wants to take part in a European call, sometimes this is not anymore the case because the University of Cantabria is very active in European programs and has a very high-level background and very good partners, but some years ago we helped very much some of those people wanting to take part in a European call and needing to have some European partners. As I told you, all the regions are represented in Brussels, so it is very easy to find partners. It is very easy to tell, for instance, I don't know what is your nationality, but to say, for instance, I'm going to call Aquitaine, I don't know, in France, because we need a partner from Aquitaine, and maybe the Bureau of Aquitaine can search for this in its region. The same if I am called because someone is searching for a Spanish partner, maybe from Cantabria. I know what center, what company, what people to call to tell them, look at this, there is a call that can be interesting for you. So the regional representation in Brussels is in charge of making this follow of the European legislation, and it depends, as I told you before, of the moment in which we are. The previous moment, it is the Commission, which is interesting for us, and the way to do with the European Commission is this networking activity that is setting up a position that is shared for more than one region, of course. Secondly, we go to the European Parliament and to the Council of Ministers, because they are the two institutions in charge of approving the legislation. The Commission is adopting the legislation, but the final approval comes from these two institutions. So, in this part of the procedure, we touch, if you want, our MEPs. With the other regions, for instance, the French regions, the Italian regions, the peripheral regions, they are going to call the MEPs and suggest them some ideas that become what we call the amendments. The amendments that all these MEPs can introduce to a report that the European Parliament is supposed to approve, to contribute to this legislation. So this is the action of the regional representations with the MEPs. And thirdly, we have the Council of Ministers of the European Union. So it means the member states, our ministries. This is not anymore necessary to go to Brussels to meet them. Every region is going to call the minister, the civil servants, I don't know, in the national ministry, just to give some inputs for the negotiation. And this is a national agreement, a national negotiation, but of course, for a country like Spain, when they are sitting at the Council of Ministers of the European Union, the environment minister is sitting with his colleagues coming from the 27 other countries of Europe. It is very interesting to meet other ministers that have the same idea, because the regions made the same work nationally, internally. Okay, so this is another part of the procedure in the legislative influence of the European regions. And you have these advisory committees, the European Social and Economic Committee and the Committee of the Regions, where we are represented. In the European Committee of the Regions, all the Spanish regions are represented, so they have a vote, they have the opportunity to express, to the other regional colleagues what they think about the proposals made by the European Commission. This is the more or less very briefly described the role of the representations in this area. Other roles we have is to search for funding. Well, here you have we follow several topics in the European scenario. We inform our regional governments about all these topics that are very interesting for them, and we organize even seminars, etc., to inform about what is important in Europe in that moment. What can be interesting for you as well later is that we have some training grants. So once you have got your diploma, your grado, no? So it's the degree of economics, for instance, in this moment. When you have this, and when you have decided to specialize yourself in European affairs, you can present your candidacy to get one of our grants. Now we are selecting our stagiaires, trainers, for 2016-2017. These are, we have 3 grants for the Brussels office, addressed to every degree. You can have a degree in economics, or you can have a degree in law, history, I don't know, any degree is good for us, but the most important thing is that you have some professional experience, or some specialized training, or some master, etc., in European affairs. We need people that have already a small background just to improve this in Brussels, in our office. You are going to follow everything. So you are going to attend meetings at the European Commission, you are going to attend meetings in the European Parliament. It is a very good knowledge that you get, and that allow you later maybe to get a job in the European institutions. We have many trainers that are now working at the European institutions, because of course you have a very good overview of what Europe is and how it works. So I just tell you this idea for maybe later. And I don't know what else. It is very important to search funding for our regions. Funding, it's very important. The advantage of Europe compared to the situation in Spain is that the budget in Europe is approved for a 7-10 years period. So you are sure to have call for funding during all these long periods. So with the crisis in Spain, many stakeholders have decided really to get involved in this kind of European calls, because in Spain there weren't anymore this kind of funding for them. So it has been very positive for us as regional office, because we have had many demands, many questions, etc. For our activity, it has been very interesting. And the role of the office is to inform about the different funding possibilities for an idea, for a project, and to help them to find partners. Because in almost all the European calls, you need to have partners coming from other European countries. So sometimes it is difficult to find a partner coming, I don't know, from Bulgaria. For us it is not difficult, because you have regional offices from Bulgaria. So you call your colleagues and maybe you present the project idea, and they can identify in their region what is or what could be the ideal partner. This is a very important role. Some of the questions you can put is what is the relationship between the regional offices in Brussels? At a Spanish level, there is a very good relationship. That maybe it is not possible in Spain, but there it is really a very collaborative relationship. And we have meetings almost all the weeks. We have working groups just to, for instance, to organize meetings with European Commission officials that instead of talking one per one about European policy, they just meet all the Spanish regions, and they explain to us future calls that are important for us or future policies that are important for us, and we put questions and we write reports for our region. So it is a very interesting coordination system that we have set up several years ago. I think that for a first overview it's enough like this. So if you have some questions about this or about other European affairs, you are welcome. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. That was really great because we looked at the institutions last week, and but we didn't see how it actually operates from the ground. So that's what you explained, so it fits perfectly. I think we've got time for maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll stop, and Inma will have a coffee, because she's going to come on again and speak in Spanish to the next group. So have you got a couple of questions? Go ahead, Benedict.
Yeah.
And then
You said that network is very important, so it's getting very subjective sometimes, and also the risk of corruption may be rising. Since,
corruption because of networking?
Just since it's not that always that transfer, there's not also transparency. When it's just like networking, no one can document it. And just an assumption I have is just is the risk of corruption rising, and if it is, how high is the level of corruption? Since corruption can have many forms. If it's also somehow like I do that, it's also.
Okay. First of all, if you have studied the institutions, the European system of decisions making, you have learned that the final legislation in the European Union is the result of a very big compromise. Yeah. Everyone has has the opportunity to be heard. Okay, so transparency is one of the main rules of the European institutions. You can find everything in the websites of the European Union. Everything. You can find the proposal, the original proposal, you can find the amendments, you can find everything. So regarding information about what the institutions are doing, you have everything. You have even the agenda of the commissioners, for instance, what people they are meeting this week. You have everything. Yeah? It has nothing to do with the role, or it is related, it is just the opposite. It is very related with the role that the people that are outside of the institutions can do. It is very related because you have a very easy access to these institutions that feel sometimes far from the reality and need to have real inputs, to have a legislation which is real, which is concrete. So the European Commission, which is in charge of writing the proposal, before doing that, almost in every case, they organize what they call public consultations. So they put on the website, for instance, some questions, some ideas, and everyone organized, not Inmaculada Valencia, but the regional government of Cantabria, everyone organized can give inputs, can give answers to these questions. Because this way, the European Commission, when they write the proposal, they have had the feeling of the, of the people, the organizations that are going to have the consequences of this legislation. Even for that, for this consultation period, the networking is important because the regional government of Cantabria can give a contribution, but if you do it with other regions sharing the same interests, it will be more powerful for the European Commission. So, public consultations open to everybody. The role of the European Parliament. The debates of the European Parliament are open. So every citizen can follow this. Every citizen can control what the amendments look like. And of course, you have in Brussels, I have not mentioned it before, but you have in Brussels what it's called the lobby. And the lobby sometimes is contradictory, because the lobby, for instance, I don't know, the smoking companies, okay? You have the lobby, a very big lobby from the smoking cigarettes company, Philip Morris, for instance. They have a very strong lobby in order to facilitate the access to cigarettes. It is their business. But on the other hand, you have the lobby of the health lobbies that are defending a legislation, a European legislation, very restrictive. All the publicity you have now in the cigarette boxes come from the European Union. And you can see there the result of a negotiation. You have still the boxes, you can get this, but you have a publicity that informs you about the consequences. You cannot have anymore in the Formula One, for instance, races, publicity about cigarettes. This is the result of this European legislation and of this health lobbying that has been stronger in this case than the. But I don't think this is something about corruption. The European Parliament controls very much the European Commission. That you cannot forget it is the European government. The Commission is the government, and the government of the European Union is submitted to the control of the European Parliament, and they can make for the European Commission if they see that there is a commissioner, for instance, listening to very much to some of these lobbies. So the control and the transparency, in my opinion, and I have been working in Europe for several years, is really one of the identity characteristics of these institutional systems. They have not the choice. They have too far for not being transparent.
Thank you. I don't want to abuse your timing, so one more question from David,
yeah?
And then we'll finish.
Hola, gracias por estar en el I would like to ask a short question.
What?
How do people...
See?
No, one question.
One question.
Yeah, it's one.
Okay.
How do people now, as in Europe, and how do we get known from...
Spanish people, you mean?
No. From regional country, from regions across Europe. How do Cantabria get known in Europe?
What is the impression? What is the image we give them?
I've been on Erasmus last semester and
where?
In Ireland. And people was asking me where are you from?
They don't know where it.
I had to use the same example as you gave from the cigarettes. I am from the advertisement in Formula 1, Santander, you know.
The Bank of Santander is the best
if you don't know,
visit card for
Cantabria. Santander, so I would like to know how that feels.
Well, it's very funny. When we opened the office in '98, everyone thought I was Italian, because everyone thought that I came from Calabria in Italy. Nobody knew about Cantabria. So we had many things to do. It is not the same thing to open the office of Catalonia, for instance, or from Andalusia, than to open the office of Cantabria. So the way we have done in all this year has been very important. So in Brussels now, what is the image of Cantabria? We are a small region, that's the case, but as I told you before, this is not a problem. You must have a good network to act, and you must identify very well what your interests are to defend them properly. And once you do this, this is not important to be Cantabria or to be Baviera, okay? So what we have done in all these years is to be very, very active in networks like the one I mentioned before, because it is a very high-level network that the European Commission listens very much. We have the presidency of one of the geographical committees of this region, the Atlantic one, peripheral maritime regions. You have the Mediterranean, you have the North Sea, you have the Atlantic. We have the presidency of the Atlantic since 2012. So it has given us the opportunity to be present in all the European fora that has been organized, for instance, to implement what they call the Atlantic Action Plan, the Atlantic Strategy, etc. When you talk at the European level, if you go to Google and you put Atlantic Strategy Cantabria, you will find us, because we have been very active. We are very active in promoting the participation of the University of Cantabria, for instance. The University of Cantabria is present in very good European projects. So what we have done in all these years is to make an image of our region, because it depends on this image that they take you seriously or not. Something which is very important is what is the role of your representation in Brussels. Many regions, not only Spanish, but several Spanish regions, every time they change the regional government, after the elections, they change all the staff in Brussels, because they are politicians. This is a mistake, because this is not the role of the representation in Brussels to make policy, if you want. Their role is to follow the policies, to inform the regional government, and the regional government, right, left, center, I don't mind, they are going to interpret this and to put a political position. But the people in Brussels have to be experts in European affairs and to have a very good network of contacts at the European institutions. They can call and I have a question, I have something to tell you. This is very, very important to be well known there and to have a good image, to be taken seriously. So the image of Cantabria today, I think we are well known. You can put our name, Cantabria Atlantic Strategy, you can put our name, I don't know, Cantabria in other business, you are going to find us. So this is an indicator.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.